currently facing severe economic challenges, which forced the government to negotiate for a $3 billion bailout from the International Monetary Fund to revive the economy. Director General of Ghana's Environmental Protection Agency, Dr. Henry Kokofu, attributes part of Ghana's economic woes to climate-related disasters, which have plunged many into poverty and has compelled the government to allocate substantial funds it doesn't have to combat these issues.
Economies of our countries are weak, fundamentally weak, and susceptible to climate damages. So loss and damage is a clear threat to our economies.
The reality is that developing nations, particularly those in the global south like Ghana, struggle to service their debt due to high interest rates imposed by international lending partners. This financial burden, according to President Akorfa at the COP28, impedes efforts to tackle the climate crisis. He called for more favorable lending conditions for vulnerable nations.
Frankly, the monies that we have access to have been the most expensive monies in the world. We are the poorest people on the globe, and when we borrow money, we pay more for it than those who have money. That is a situation that has reversed, and it can only be reversed if the World Bank and the IMF become this catalyst for being able to access the large monies that are out.
There is a tug of war for limited funds as citizens seek improved infrastructure, education, and essential services, while the government must also allocate resources for climate mitigation and adaptation efforts. There's lingering disappointment over the failure of rich nations to fulfill their climate finance commitment to poor nations. And despite agreements at COP28 to establish the Loss and Damage Fund, which offers some hope for addressing mistrust between developed and developing nations, Jurgen Vogel, the World Bank's Vice President for Sustainable Development, stressed that this fund should not be treated like any other.
I can assure you, we will not treat this fund the way we treat any other fund. There will be no delay in setting this fund up. But it will take, though, it takes two to tango. What needs to happen now very quickly after this historic decision is that a governance structure for this fund is established. Just to be very honest with all of you, that things will not be so easy to get to decision-making to set this fund up and transact the money, and that part of it will then be, oh, well, the World Bank's too slow. Right? Let me just be very clear. This one will not be on us.
There are also concerns from Ghana's civil society. Awula Serwah of eco-conscious citizens says there is a disconnect between government rhetoric and the reality. Although she agrees that Ghana needs to benefit from the Loss and Damage Fund, payment to the government must be under strict conditions, she says.
There seems to be a contradiction. We seem to be involved in Green Ghana, which means planting trees, so many trees. At the same time, we've passed EI 144, which declassifies parts of Achimota Forest Reserve, one of the last remaining forest reserves in Accra, the lungs of Accra. We've also passed, Parliament has passed LI 2462, which allows virtually unfettered access into our forest reserves, even globally significant biodiversity areas, if the president in writing says it's in the public interest. Once we are doing this, there does not seem to be any seriousness in tackling climate change. It seems to be like we are engaged in contradictory activities. And so until we show that we are serious, we shouldn't be in a position to access any funds.
While the Ghanaian government welcomes the move to support vulnerable countries dealing with climate change impact through the Loss and Damage Fund, Executive Director of the Environmental Protection Agency, Dr. Henry Kokofu, reiterates the need for debt cancellation as a crucial step forward.
That is what we are going to advocate for. We need that debt exchange, debt for the climate crisis.
What we need to do is have the assurance that if the debts are forgiven, the funds will actually be used for the purpose for which they would have been released, that is climate adaptation or mitigation.
Whether this demand will be met remains uncertain, but time will be the ultimate arbiter. Eugenia, Akorfa, Kumi, Metro News, Dubai.
So this story was produced as part of the 2023 Climate Change Media Partnership, a journalism fellowship organized by Internews' Earth Journalism Network and the Stanley Center for Peace and Security.